Welcome to Oakland Is. This show is about movers and shakers and image makers, people who make a difference every day in ordinary ways and in spectacular ways. We have two very prominent guests on our show today. One is a young man who has been honored several times for the work that he's doing at McClymonds. Our topic is, can McClymonds High School be saved? We also have on our show Mr. Oscar Wright, who is one of the persons who is a community activist, and he has been helping in the community over the years to save many schools on behalf of Black students, African American students, and he's a persistent advocate. The young man that I mentioned to you is Mr. Michael Carraway, Jr. He is a very prominent student at McClymonds High School, a freshman. And I'd like to start with you, Mr. Carraway, Michael, and tell us about some of the things that you have done. You had something that you received a special award for, and also something you're doing in the community. Would you share some of that with us?
Yes, the awards I received are community awards. One I was received by Oakland Firefighters Random Acts and Attitudinal Healing Connection. I was recognized by Congresswoman Barbara Lee, recognized also by Mayor Jean Quan. I was honored on CNN. I was a CNN Hero Young Wonder, and I was featured on Nickelodeon, A Gift of Life.
A Gift of Life.
Yes.
And the CNN Young Hero was about, what was that about, the gift also?
About community, about doing a lot for your community.
Okay, so what are you doing for your community?
What I do is that I feed the homeless once a month.
You feed the homeless once
Yes.
a month. Why are you doing that?
I do it because my mom asked me what I want to do to pay it forward.
Pay it forward.
Yes. And I said, Mom, what does paying it forward mean? She says to give something to someone and not expect anything in return. So I said, let's feed the homeless. So ever since December 25th, 2008, we started feeding 25 people. Ever since then, we fed over 5,000 people in the city of Oakland.
In the city of Oakland.
Yes.
And the reason you wanted to pay it forward, what were you paying forward?
Because what the donors gave to me, because I had a liver transplant on November 1st, 2008. So I couldn't pay them back what they gave to me. So I've been feeding the homeless in honor of their son, and we started feeding on December 25th, 2008.
You received a liver from a son that had passed away?
Yes, he was 18 years old. His name was Johnny Hernandez, and he was killed on a motorcycle accident.
Is that right?
Yes.
Well, thank you. Now, as a freshman, you're also a city council, you're on a council at the high school?
Yes, I'm on student council. My job is commissioner of activities, and what the commissioner of activities does is that we plan and suggest ideas for extracurricular activities for the school.
Right. And you attended a conference in Fresno with 40,000 young people from all over California just recently.
Yes.
Could you tell us about that?
Yes, sure. I went to Camp Roberts in Fresno, and what we were doing there was that we were preparing to see what they were doing out there in Fresno to get us ready for Sacramento. It's something like they were electing president, youth governor, 65th student governor, and stuff like that.
Thank you so much. Mr. Wright, can you tell us about what's going on about saving McClymonds? Because our topic is, can we save McClymonds High School? It has quite a history.
Well, McClymonds is one of the oldest schools in Oakland here, and it's located in the West Oakland area there, where in the early years, that's where all black people lived in that, along to what they call now the McClymonds Corridor. Yes. We all lived in there, no matter what title you wore, what position you held, what economic status you held, whether you was a Mason or a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, doctor, lawyer, whatever. And we owned everything in that area except the banks and a couple of other things we owned. We had real black communities at that time. We had a school there where it produced some of the greatest of people who existed in this country here, from mayors to senators, some of the greatest athletes that ever been, some of the greatest scholars that ever been. But the system, the way it happened, they wanted to close the school down. And the way they did it, they went what they called the school-based budgeting, meaning that you only get the amount of money that according to the number of students at the school. So over the years, they have, you say, in Oakland High, Skyline, and Technical High School, you have most students with McClymonds zip codes in those three schools, each one of those schools, than you have in attendance at McClymonds School. So as a result, it gives them credit, you give them a leeway to close it down because so they don't have enough schools. And we're in the struggle now to try to save that school and to make sure that they put whatever they need at that school for the students who attend that school, so they won't have to be going to these other schools.
We're
just asking for equity.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been fighting for 52 years here in Oakland schools here. And all we ask for is equity.
So
and you can look at this cap that I have here. I'm a veteran of war. I'm an 88-year-old American man who's really proud to be black. I'm one of 7 brothers that served in World War II and the Korean War in segregated armies. We went where they sent us. We did what they told us to do. And we all discharged. I have 6 of my brothers are buried in military graves. And I intend to do whatever I can do to make sure that our children in West Oakland have access on an equal playing field.
Yes, to make that equal playing field, you're working with parents, I understand. You have a mobilization of the neighborhood.
A fellow by the name of Mr. Tapscott, he was the first black coach in the Oakland school.
Yes.
And he coached at McClymonds. He also served in administration, and he was served also, I think, as assistant principal down in Union City schools. He's been around.
Yes.
And he is forward in a mobilization of the community there and whatever resources that we can find, politicians and everything else, to try to make sure that we restore that school to what it ought to be, where the kids in that area there can have a real access to be able to go into the 4-year colleges or be competitive in the job market.
This show, Oakland Is, shows all the way from, I think it's Vacaville, all the way to Santa Cruz. So it definitely will show in Oakland on Channel 32. And it comes on every Saturday at 11:30 a.m. Is there a message you would like to send out to the people who live in the area of the Oakland Unified School District? The
message I'd like to send is that according to the Constitution of the United States, the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, it guarantees all American citizens, regardless of race or color or previous condition of servitude, the equality, justice, and equal access. So does the 15th Amendment of the Constitution, ever since 1872, gave us the right to vote. And that's what I'm saying. It says no citizen of the United States can be denied or abridged the right to vote because of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. We are only asking for nothing special, that we be given an equal chance, equity, and give our children the same chance that all the rest of the children have.
So people who are watching this show, what can they do to help?
What they can do to help is to advocate for the same thing that we're asking for, saying to our government, there's no longer, the day has passed long since that America can afford to be segregated. That America now that has brought immigrant kids from all over the world and put them in the best schools, giving them much opportunity. And now that they have this sort of thing, and we need the charity begins at home. So we need now to do what we have to do now, because we are not going to be able to compete with the rest of the industrialized world unless we come together as one people. We are United States of America, not a black one, a white one, a polka dot one. We are one United States, and the people in this city and throughout this country has to recognize this, because if we're going to compete with those other industrialized worlds, we got to have education, and education is the only solution. And when I say education, I'm not limited to just high academic achievement. I mean, when I say education, I'm talking about education that's a combination of high academic skills with high moral, social, and spiritual values, propelled by common sense. When I was a child, they called it motherwit. Then they named it common sense. Now they call it critical thinking skills. Mm-hmm. It simply means to teach our kids to read with comprehension and utilize the God-given ability to think and reason, and cut out this here segregation stuff and the institutionalized racism that's going in this country. And each one of us can play a role.
That's right.
Some of us play different roles at different places. But because I can't do everything, I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not fail to do the things I think. One-on-one, we can all come together and realize that what we see now at this place, at this Port of Oakland, and out there at the tenements, I mean, what you call Moscone Square, and all these, it used to be black people out there demonstrating, but you see young white people now who has paid the price, and they have paid the dues, sacrifice, and they have no jobs. They don't see much future. So America has to come on, and each one of us has to take responsibility for whatever we can do to make this thing right.
So the viewing audience, I think some of them would identify with that Occupy movement, which talks about the 99%. Do you think they can be attracted to help with this issue with McClymonds?
It's just, I most certainly can, because as I said, you know, and I see some of it really taking place now, you know, but people beginning to really to understand, you know, that America can't exist in that dual educational system any longer. That we're going to have to get down there and utilize every mind that we have, you know. And the other night, you know, and I meet with large groups of people at a school board meeting, and they talk about nothing there but black and Mexican people, mostly black people, asking for McClymonds to be restored and not to close the schools down, you know, like they did during the Brown versus the Board of Education. Instead of making them equal, that's what we're asking for. And that's what then each one of us can play a role in that.
Thank you so much. As we wrap up, I'd like to thank both of you and Michael for the work you're doing and the honors and the achievements and your commissioner work and your the council work. Congratulations for this effort and your persistence, Mr. Wright, the work you have done over the years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity to have these few words to say.
And to the audience, we'll be right back with part 2. Welcome back to part 2 of Oakland Is. Today we are featuring Can We Save McClymonds High School in Oakland, and 2 of the trailblazers that are connected with this effort, and the community and parent involvement and others in the community. We want the audience who is watching this show to be able to know what they might be able to contribute, or if there's anything that can be done to save McClymonds High School. We have Mr. Ben Tapscott, who is a former coach, and I understand from Mr. Oscar Wright, you were the first coach at McClymonds High School.
First black basketball coach, Dr. Cannon.
First black
in Oakland.
In Oakland. And I used to listen to you on the radio every Sunday with the Don Warden show, talking about McClymonds and the teams and the sport. You were winning all the championships, I believe.
They made me look good.
And our other guest, is Miss Gwen Bikis, who works with the adult education as a teacher in the Oakland Unified School District. And a lot of what she has shared with me is that there's a presence of the adult school at McClymonds, I believe, because they have been going through some transitions also in terms of the adult school education. So, Mr. Tapscott, what is it you would like to share with the viewing audience that could be helpful to the community and to the students at McClymonds High School?
Well, I think, Dr. Cannon, a little history. When the Bill Gates money came in and the small school concept was introduced to the city of Oakland, that was proven to be very successful back east. 2005, McClymonds had 850 students. They had 61 classes and 14 advanced placement classes. They divided the school up into smaller schools. One of the small schools was closed. The second school continued to struggle. The enrollment dropped to 230 students. I taught at McClymonds for 16 years, and I can never remember the enrollment being under 1,000. I think the school district has let the school fall to a very terrible curriculum. We have open enrollment. I have nothing against that, but I do have something against not having all of the high schools comparable in classes that they offer. When you look at Tech, which is one of the neighboring schools, they offer 103 classes. They offer 14 advanced placement classes. McClymonds currently has 21 classes and 1 advanced placement classes. So the inequity that has been allowed to exist by the Oakland School Board and the superintendent's office speaks to me that they're not concerned about African American students in West Oakland.
So as a consequence of that, what do you think needs to be done?
They need to drastically improve the curriculum, back up to the 2005 standards. They need to introduce computer courses so that those kids coming out will be comparable in certain skills. It's the last stop for kids that move on into the world of work or go on for higher education. And if they're not adequately prepared for either of those paths, it's going to be a very extremely difficult road for those students.
So what can the viewing audience do, if anything?
I think the parents in Oakland need to come together as a group. We have meetings once a month. We are not only concerned about education in West Oakland. There are currently 5 schools that are slated for closure. The superintendent made that proposal. We gave him a counter proposal where they could save $17 million, not close any schools by consolidating, but he chose to submit 5 schools to be closed. 4 black schools, 1 brown school. They're claiming to save $2 million, and now they're talking about not even saving that amount of money. If you look at the history in West Oakland, they have already closed 4 schools in one part of the town. They closed Cole, they closed Hoover, they closed Marcus Foster, they took half of Lowell. McClymonds only had 2 feeder schools to begin with, so now they have a half.
A half that feeds into.
So what would happen to the enrollment and a inferior curriculum?
So therefore, persons can assist by doing what?
The first thing we need to do is let the Board of Education and the Office of Superintendent know for a fact that we will save McClymonds High School, that we will do anything legally that is necessary. We are planning on filing lawsuits. We have attained some attorneys. We are working with the NAACP. We will not stand by and let them close the School of Champions.
You also had a representative from the Office of Civil Rights, I believe, at your last meeting?
Yes, we did.
So therefore, you're going to pursue many approaches and
any means necessary that is legal.
Legal. All right. I appreciate that. Now, Ms. Bikis, what are you saying about the adult program that you would like to share that needs to be rectified?
I think I wasn't aware until I went to the meeting this week that so many parents at McClymonds were upset about the presence of adult ed on campus. But having heard their concerns, I can see why they would be. And I think it's part of the marginalization process, both of adult ed and McClymonds. At one time, adult ed had a large campus in East Oakland, Edward Chan's adult school. That's now sitting there empty. It had the whole entire facility at Clinton Park Adult School. Now there's 1 small GED class there. The district saved no money on that because they were renting that. They weren't renting it, they were getting it free from the city. There were a lot of site-based classes. Now all of that is gone, and they all put it over there at McClymonds. It seems like they're sending everything over there that they eventually want to get rid of.
So then, is there anything that you would think the viewing audience can do to be helpful?
I think the viewing audience has to be very skeptical, about everything that comes out of the district these days. I think the parents of Oakland Unified School District children, and also people who have children who live in their neighborhood, even if they don't have children of their own, what the schools do or don't do impacts whole entire neighborhoods, and everybody in the neighborhood should come to school board meetings, come to the meetings that Mr. Tapscott is heading, and be very, very outspoken questioning of everything that the school district does, says, claims.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've heard something about demands. I think there were years ago in the Berkeley schools, we worked with an organization that presented over 25 demands to the school board, and it resulted in a lot of change. And it was an organization, so we had that. So it sounds like, Mr. Tapscott, you have a capacity building group that you're working with. Would you like others to come to the meeting?
We would welcome, the new McClymonds Committee was formed by parents in the city, and that's all parents of all colors, the alumni, and any citizen that is concerned about the education of children in Oakland. Our main focus is West Oakland, but we are very much concerned about all of the schools because we are one school district. I'm not at this point a big fan of Dr. Tony Smith, our superintendent. I'm beginning to question whether or not he is the person to lead our schools. We have no secretaries in many schools. We have no counselors. We have no administrators. It seems that there is a downward trend in the quality and support staff for the schools, and certain things aside from qualified teachers need to be in place. If I call a high school and it has to ring 20 times before someone answers it, it speaks to the fact that we need to make a lot of changes.
So there's no secretary at the...
Many schools have no secretary.
At McClymonds?
At many of the schools.
At many of them.
And no counselors.
And no counselors. So then your suggestions would be for people to... When is your next meeting?
I think we will meet February the 16th. We presented a proposal to the district office representatives. We had 47 parents at our last meeting, and they are not happy, and they are not going away.
And at a previous meeting, I believe you had 70 people there, parents. So it does show that parents are beginning to voice their concerns.
All parents are concerned about their child's education, regardless to where they live.
That's right. And the fact that they're not showing up, this probably will show in their homes. I hope they'll see this show and know that they can attend the meetings.
Well, we appreciate you having us on the show.
Right, because if they miss this one that's coming up in February, what was the date on that?
We meet once a month. I think it's February 16th.
I see.
And that is at 6 p.m. in McClymonds Library.
In the library. And then they would be able to enter through the parking lot area of the school. So anything you'd like to share about the teacher equity issue, about, let's say, the curriculum and how it's delivered by teachers in the adult schools?
I wanted to talk a little bit about measuring of curriculum, which the district spends a lot of time doing, assessing and things like that. It really intrigued me at the meeting this week that they had the ABCF policy at McClymonds, whereby Ds cannot be given out. And it really interests me. This is what I mean about the school district. Sometimes it's so, I can't think of any other word other than nefarious, that someone would design something like that at McClymonds that is different than every other high school in Oakland, that would affect the API, the Academic Performance Index, which is what they base closures on. So it's changing the means in order to change the ends so we can get rid of you.
So that means you go from a C to an F. You don't you have no opportunity for a D.
And that affects grade point average and all kinds of things.
Affects the grade point average. So I know a C is not always considered the best grade, but it's better than a D and surely better than an F.
And it affects their graduation requirements too.
Yes. So what are your thoughts, Mr. Tapscott, about other things that need to be addressed in terms of equity?
Well, when you look at 40% of the students in Oakland Public Schools not graduating and dropping out, that speaks to a greater issue. 40% is absolutely unacceptable. I hear great things coming out of the superintendent's office, but I don't see those visions coming forth to impact on the problem. When you look at the violence in Oakland, many of these students went through our schools. For whatever reason, they were forced out, pushed out, or kicked out. They have no skills. They then end up in crime. They end up in prisons. And it's a downward spiral in terms of them entering the criminal law arena. And I think that we have an obligation to make sure all students, regardless of where they live, have a quality education. I don't have a problem with integration. I don't have a problem with open enrollment. I do have a big problem with segregation within the integration, and I see a disparity in the black schools and the fact that the superintendent, since he got here, has chosen to close 4 more black schools and 1 brown school.
Well, it sounds as though he was at the meeting yesterday with Assemblyman Sandre Swanson dealing with boys and men of color. Did you know about that?
It's a very small program that's going to impact a very small amount of students.
Oh, because it's for the whole Alameda County, and over 400 people were in attendance. So, but he was there. They had a series of panels, and young panel of men spoke, one young lady. But it was really evident that they had tried to get people to come forward with things that can work. So I think equity was all that they were about. And Dr. Smith spoke in terms of being, as a white citizen who's been in Oakland for a number of years, I think 15 years, he's very much committed. So I think it's timely that we're having this show, because maybe people will begin to speak to the superintendent and the school board and follow through on your recommendations as we wrap up. Is there anything you needed to say before we wrap up?
Well, I would just like to encourage the parents not to give up and give out, to fight for their children.
Okay.
And that means that we can win.
Fight, fight, fight. And thank you, Ms. Bikis. Would you recommend that we fight, continue to fight?
I recommend that we fight, and we also ask questions about things like Tony Smith's salary.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing, and we hope the audience will respond and get back to your work that you're doing.
And thank you so much for having us.